Hi guys, this is V. Welcome back to another video in the residency application series that I'm filming. Today we're going to talk all about letters of recommendation. Let's get started. So I've broken this video up into a few sections and you can look at the timeline below. Don't forget to comment, subscribe, and tell me if you have any questions or other things you would like to add that could help other people. For general letters of recommendation tips, so you need 3 letters of recommendations minimum per application and 4 is the maximum you can upload. I highly suggest do 4 for every single program. Just try to maximize your chances. My second piece of advice here, always waive your right to see the letter. That just makes you seem more creditable, and I think programs definitely appreciate that. If, however, you are given the opportunity by a letter writer to provide input into the letter, be honest about it. I think in that case, take full advantage of that opportunity and write the things in the letter that you think make you stand out the most, like certain experiences and stuff, but then be honest about it. Other than that particular situation, always waive your right to see the letter. If certain programs have requirements such as Dean's letter that needs to be uploaded, I would suggest making a list of all those programs beforehand when you're researching and jotting down which ones need those, because you don't want to pay for a program and apply and then realize that you forgot to upload one thing to be considered, and that could be as simple as a Dean's letter. Make sure you know which programs have requirements for certain letters. Also, when it comes to asking doctors that are related to you for letters, this did come up in a meeting that I was at, like a seminar about LORs, and they did mention that try not to ask somebody that's related to you for a letter, regardless of whether they are a physician and you have worked with them for a long time. I think it's just better refrain from asking a relative for one. It makes you seem more creditable that way also. Another general tip is start extremely early. It's a very long process for people to write the letters, for them to upload it, for ERAS to process it. That's something I didn't know, is that it could also take 2 or 3 business days on top of the additional days that it takes to upload for ERAS to process the LORs and to verify them. So don't do this last minute, especially if you're trying to make the deadline, which I also highly suggest make that deadline. In order to do that, make sure that you reach the letter writers early enough, give them enough time to make sure that they upload it on time. Another important thing is if you have good rep with your student coordinator in the hospital, which you should, really great, and they can help you out in reminding the letter writers or giving you advice on how to approach a certain letter writer to ask for a LOR. Years, if you are going to be applying to, especially as a prelim year, I would recommend getting a letter from the specialty for the prelim. So if you're going into radiology and you're going to do an IM prelim year, I would suggest, I think it's a good idea to get an IM letter for that case as well. Moving on to the crux of it, choosing your letter writers. I think in this case, it's quality over quantity. Or I guess not quality over quantity, quality over status, I would say. You want to choose letter writers that you have worked with, that know you well, more than, asking somebody just because they have a big name in the game. I'm not saying that it's a bad idea to ask, the head of the department or ask the program director, but if you haven't worked one-on-one with the program director, would you choose a semi-okay letter from the program director versus a very strong letter from just an attending you worked with? I would 100% go with a stronger letter. And I came through this personal sort of obstacle when I was thinking about, I was like, who should I ask when I wanted to apply? But definitely I went with quality of the letters over the status. During my interviews, I had a couple of comments here and there, but about you had really strong letters and that's really great. Or, oh, so-and-so wrote this very highly about you in your letter. Can you tell me more about what you did? Or, there were like specifics that they chose from the letter that I didn't know about that they brought up in the interview, and I had a chance to explain and say more about my connection with that attending. But because I chose quality letter writers, I was able to say, oh yeah, I worked with Dr. So-and-so in so-and-so clinic, and this is what we did, and this is what we talked about. So I always had more of a story to tell than just a work connection. Of course, if that is hard and you don't have options, definitely make the 3 letters. That's the most important thing, is make the numbers of the 3 letters. But if you do have options, I would say choose quality. All doctors are reputable. All doctors will write nice things, but you want somebody to write something genuine, backs it up with examples and explanations about why you're such a great fit for that specialty. So for me personally, I had 2 associate PD letters for my specialties and then 1 PD letter from a different specialty that I used. If I remember correctly, for my FM letters, I had 2 FM docs and then a pediatrics and an OBGYN letter. So that also makes sense. If you're going into a specialty like FM where you encounter all of those subspecialties, it's a good idea to try to get diverse letters as well. For IM, I believe I had 2 IM associate PD letters, and then I think I had either an OB letter or a surgery letter. I can't remember exactly, but all of them were very nice and they did get back to me. Ask early and ask as many people as you can that you do build a connection with. Try to get diversity as well. I would refrain asking the residents or other fellows to write you letters. In the case that you don't have a strong relationship with an attending, but you did work very closely with the fellow or resident, I don't think it's a bad idea to ask the fellow or resident to see if they can give input in the attending's letter, or when you're asking the attending, tell them I worked with so, and they know me extremely well. We worked on these patient cases. And if they want to contact those people in reference to writing things about you in the letter. But I do think the best thing to do is to ask attendings and PDs and the head departments that you did work with for letters. So again, be aware of some program-specific requirements. Research. If certain programs require certain letters, be proactive. As soon as you know that's a requirement, go ahead and start asking those specific department people for those letters. Now talking about the prime time to ask for letters. When I went through my third year core rotations from SGU, I would ask in the end of the rotation. I think you need to strike a balance between asking too early and waiting too long. If you wait too long, people can forget you. They cycle through students all the time. You want to make sure you have a lasting impression in the moment. Also, don't ask too early. You may not have had enough time to spend with these people and they don't even know you. I would give it at least an attending that I spent most amount of time on and floors or doing procedures with, ask them near the end of the rotation. Make sure you impress those attendings that you're trying to ask for letters, and especially in the specialty that you're applying for, impress those attendings, go above and beyond sort of work that you're doing. Impress the residents too and ask them to make a nice comment about you, or ask them to, give feedback to the attending when they're doing evaluations and say, I had a great time working with such and such students, because I assure you, for sure, everybody talks, and if you're a good student, you will stand out and people will know. Likewise, if you're a terrible student, you will stand out for the wrong reasons and people will know too. Started making sure that all of my letter writers knew during the entire third year that I wanted them to be my particular letter writer. And once they said yes, then I remember that around probably June, July, I would remind them again to be like, hey, thank you for saying yes to being my letter writer back in the day. Here's just some things that I'd like to provide to help you through this letter process, and this is the deadline. So that's something that you should do, and I will talk more about that in the prep before asking for letters. But about July and August is when I would start emailing, like within every 2 weeks, if somebody hadn't already uploaded the letter, to make sure that they knew that they had enough time to still upload it. Your letters of recommendation can still be uploaded even after the deadline. But in order for your application to be fully complete, you want to make sure you have a minimum of 3 letters of recommendation. Again, highly suggest having all 4 for every application that you do. I did want to jump really quick into the topic of COVID-19 and this whole situation. I know for a lot of people, including my own friends that are MS3s right now, that have the problem of being in clinic or missing certain rotations and having to do them online, where you're not going to get the chance to work one-on-one with those attendings. I think it's a very tricky situation, and I do feel for those students. I think my best advice would be, if you are in that position, the best thing would be to contact your school advisors, your school medical advisors, guidance counselors, or for SGU, the clinical counselor, and ask them what they think the best thing to do is, or if they can maybe set up a way for you to work online. See if you can do something extra, an extra project, anything to sort of give you that one-on-one or that communicative time with an attending from your specialty if you haven't had the chance to rotate through that because of COVID. I think that's a great thing to do. It just shows that you're proactive and you're taking the steps to prepare yourself and your application for the right direction. It's just as important for you to prepare before asking your letter writer for this letter. What I did was I made a cover letter indicating my request to this attending. It would include specifics such as reminding them of when we worked with, the dates of the rotation, and giving them specific patient cases that I worked on with them, what I did in the team, what my roles were, how I thought I made an impact. And this list give exact examples for them to put in their letter, which makes you stand out way more than a generic letter. And you can use these things also for your personal statement and other parts of your application. So it's a great idea to jot down specific cases and specific things that you learned, or something that they've taught you, an impact that they've had in your learning. If they've impacted you to be part of a specific specialty, that's great. Say that in the cover letter. And if you can get a chance to express that person like in face to face, that's even better. The cover letter puts everything on paper. Also in the letter, it's a great way to politely state your deadline at the end. In the last paragraph, just say, I know you're very busy, and thank you again for offering to do this. Just to let you know, there is a deadline for this, and I would love it if you could upload it by so-and-so. Additionally, with the cover letter, I also gave a CV, more resources for them to add things into your letter. They can say specific things that, that you've done that would be a great addition in your application. So if there was a chance that I couldn't do this in person, I would always email these things to the attending and letter writer and make sure that they know that, hey, I've attached this in your email if you need it for extra reference. If you have any questions about anything I've done specifically, don't hesitate to ask. So this just makes you seem prepped, professional, and it makes it, trust me, a lot easier for the letter writer. So now you have your letter writer, you ask them. The best thing to do is to go to their office hours, like I said, or emailing them. Then you now go on into ERAS and you put in their information about your letter writer. ERAS is going to send them an email indicating that you've requested this letter, and then they'll go ahead and they'll input it into ERAS. Deadlines are approaching. I think it's a great way to send informal little emails, just catching up and seeing where the letter is at. I again, fine line between being annoying and asking nicely. Don't be annoying and start hounding down your letter writers every day, before the deadline. I would put a notification on my phone every 2 weeks. I would send a nice email just saying, hey, I hope you remember me. Just wanted to know if there were any other questions that you had, or if I can help with anything in the letter writing process. Obviously, without being a part of the process, they're very busy. Just help to remind them that they have a deadline coming up for that. But from my experiences, they were all very good with knowing the deadline. So I didn't have many problems with that, but a great way to do is follow up. Once they've done this, ERAS will send you an email, like I had mentioned earlier, and that indicates to you that you need to follow up and thank them for doing this. What I personally did was handwritten thank you cards for my letter writers. Saw that ERAS had uploaded it and it's been all processed. I would go in personally to the hospital because I had the chance then and give them the thank you card. Last but not the least, we'll just talk really quickly about Dean's Letter and MSPE. So for Dean's Letter, I'm not sure about how all schools work out, but I'm going to tell you how SGU does it. SGU students, if you need a Dean's Letter for certain programs, you have to email your clinical coordinator about this. I will put a link down below for SGU students, the link that goes straight to more information about the Dean's Letter. Your MSPE coordinator is who you would email. I'm just looking at my previous emails here so I can give you a better idea. So I emailed my MSPE coordinator that I needed both FMIM Dean's Letters for my programs. And so I got an email that told me that the day that I requested this email, they record that date down. So it goes in order. And again, just to read out, even in their email, they've written that although the chair letter content may not be very significant, this document is a significant factor of whether you can apply to certain programs. Be careful of this letter because they're only going to give you one and they'll email it to you. Again, where you are in the list of students that have requested it already is how long it'll take for you to get that letter. Ask early so that you don't run into problems with the deadline afterwards. However, that being said, I know SGU was very good at getting the letter as soon as possible. It's a very generic letter. I'm just skimming through it now. But again, it could make or break an application, especially if they do require it. So that's for department chair letters. And I think that's all of the advice and tips that I have for letters of recommendation. If you have any questions or concern, please feel free to comment below. I will try my best to get back to you. And if you want to collab on something in the future, let me know. My email is also in the